Hello, my wonderful people. Welcome to my channel. We are doing the Navamsha case studies, yes? And now we have come to the wife's Navamsha chart and how her husband sees the marriage. The same marriage with the previous guy in the previous video. And let's examine this. And before that, a personal note. In this new energy stamp on this planet, which is there right now, and it is continuing to play, it will continue to play for decades to come, centuries to come, and so on. What is the value of this technology, the Vedic technology, in understanding Navamsha, in understanding intimate relationships, in understanding the subconscious drives? That's all the planets show really, is the subconscious drives, which comes through the filter of the past lives, the karma, and what you must do accomplish in this life. So it both the past and the future, not just a singular aspect, by the way. Because karma is getting cleaned up, it's getting changed on the planet, so it's obviously futuristic, it's obviously where you're going, not just where you came from. And that's changing so quickly that this kind of technologies will be immensely useful and used, just watch my words, it will be used for precisely that kind of analysis in understanding relationships, intimate relationships, partnerships, marriage, and so on. This old, broken down, outdated, dusted ideas of wows, like VOW wow, has to go to WOW wow, like wow kind of partnership. Okay, like look at that partnership, it is good. There's outmoded ideas of contracts and signing something, and I did this for you and you did that for me, and all this transactional view of human relationships is gone. It's gone forever. You'll see a lot of changes in every country about this. So let's see, without any further ado, this wonderful lady's chart, her Navamsha chart, and now we are taking the spouse's analysis of what he perceives the marriage as, which is very different from how the wife saw the husband, by the way. Just have a look, and you can compare this video, part 5, I think, or part 4, this one with the previous one on this. And then put the two side by side. A challenge you, put the two side by side and see how different the husband sees the wife and the wife sees the husband. Just do that one analysis, and we'll go to do more case studies. I just had an intuition that we should do more case studies. The more case studies, the more refinement of knowledge. Okay, it becomes more and more refined as you participate and as you understand the nuances, the finer nuances, not just of planets, aspects, houses, yada yada, not all just the technical stuff, but it should give you the human element. That's where I come from, at least. Okay, so let's see the wife's Navamsha chart. So here we go. First, the first house. Again, just to recap, the first house is the 7th house in the case of her chart. Now she is an Aries ascendant, as you can see, with all these planets. Saturn in the first house, Moon in the 12th house, Venus in the 2nd house, and so on. Right? This is her Navamsha chart. And now we are going to look at it from Mr. Husband's point of view, which is 7th house. So if for an Aries ascendant, 7th becomes a Libra. So right off the bat, you should be able to tell that the husband is of a Libran type of mentality, very Venus-like driven quality. And I know this husband personally, by the way. So it has got a very Venus-like quality, right? Libra ascendant. So all about passion. Libra is an air sign, a male sign, very masculine. It is ruled by Venus. So Venus becomes the dominant dispositor of how it looks at all the houses. So what is the first house? Desire of the spouse from marriage, individuality, unique qualities of the spouse personality traits, strengths, weaknesses, etc. We are talking about him as a personality. So looking at this, the dispositor of this house, since there are no planets here in this first house of spouse, 7th house of her Navamsha chart, the dispositor is Venus, which is placed in 2nd house in her chart, in her Navamsha chart. So that's the first order of business. See the dispositor where it's placed. Also see if there are some other planets aspecting or points aspecting. In this case, Rahu from the 5th house is looking directly in one of the aspects at this 7th house. So I have summarized here. So what is the quality this husband has, this fellow, okay, this gentleman? Sometimes he can be a rogue, but he's a very nice guy. Libran, he's a Libran with strong Taurus in the 8th, looking at it from his point of view. That 2nd of hers becomes 8th of his, right? Okay. So a strongly grounded Venus in the husband as a personality. Venus in Taurus is exalted. Obviously, it's its own sign. And he's a Libra, so he's looking at Venus also. Both apply. So a strongly grounded Venus is there for him, husband as a personality, which translates to what for us? Stability, practicality, keen eye on joint assets after marriage. Why? It's looking at the 8th house. For him, Venus is sitting in the 8th house. What is my wife and I having property in common? Do my in-laws have some property? Can I gain some property out of it? There's a keen eye on it. Desires real estate. Why? Because Venus is in Taurus, which is very earthly, which is very grounded. He wants in terms of land. And by the way, he just bought a land, a huge piece of land near his native place. Attracted strongly to physical luxury. Taurus is very materialistic, very physically sensual. Libra is very sensual in the air, in the mind. It's got abstract sense of sensuality, whereas Taurus has got a grounded sense of sensuality. These are the difference in sensuality between Taurus and Libra. And Navamsha being ruled by Venus, it's very important to look at the houses of Venus, which is Taurus and Libra. Now in this case, as you can see, it's very dominant, right? Attracted strongly to physical luxury, sensuality, and sexuality a priority. Why am I calling sexuality a priority? Because Rahu is in the 5th house, from looking at it from his perspective. Now, if it is sitting in the 5th house of romance, love, and desires, and creative intelligence, Rahu is going to amplify that and bring it to the ascendant. In his case, 7th house of this lady's Navamsha chart, right? So it brings about a very strong inclination towards sexual desires, wanting to have love, wanting to have romance. Rahu, when it looks at 5th, it becomes highly romantic. It wants that romantic candlelight dinners, take spouse out for this. He wants all this stuff. Okay, he's into romance. Now, attracted strongly to sexuality and sensuality as well. Now, there's a difference between sensuality and sexuality in the sense sensuality is also more about fine things of life. It's about art, it's about crafts, it's about music, it's about dance, drama, all kinds of things. And being in Taurus, it will crave all this also, remember. But in this case, because Rahu and Venus both combine, he requires all of this to feel fulfilled as a person. That's what he's looking for in the marriage also. Rahu in the 5th makes him desire romance with a partner. Interest in speculative gains. 5th house matter is speculative gains. Oh my god, this guy is into stock market and all that. Sexual affairs with foreign women. Why? It's in 5th house looking at the ascendant. Okay? That can be an element of that. Secretive about his money. Why? Because Venus is sitting in the 8th house. It can be secretive. 8th house is secretive. I don't want to tell how much money I have in the bank balance. That kind of secretive. Secretive about his money with spouse. Secretive about his wealth, how much he has. Secretive about his bank balance. Mind occupied with the concerns of financial security a lot. Again, think of the dispositor of the ascendant, which in this case is Libra, which is sitting in Taurus in the 8th house. Always his mind is working towards, oh, am I going to lose money from stock market? Am I going to gain money from stock market or from property and so on? That's always on the back of his mind. He may also use Venus to charm and seduce the opposite sex. Very, very significant. I've seen it with this guy also. He's very charming with women. Women get charmed by him like that because his Venus is in Taurus. They are charmers. It's like snake charmer, right? It's like Krishna. They are charmers of women. They know how to talk them into anything, into going out with them, having a dinner with them, anything. They can do that much faster if Venus is in Taurus, right? And it is looking at the 8th house. So the desire is more towards getting into bed with them rather than anything else, okay? So that's the 1st house. Now let's see the 2nd house, which will be Scorpio. So looking at the 2nd house, what have you got in the 2nd house? It's ruled by Scorpio sign, okay? So first we'll see the dispositor is placed in the 10th house of this gentleman, and it is combined with Jupiter, and Venus also from his 8th house looks at his 2nd house. Okay, follow me here. So 8th house stands for 8th house of Navamsha, but basically 2nd house stands for financial stability, Finances earned by spouse. What is this guy earning? And how is he doing well in his career, in his spouse, and in his work? Sorry. Elder siblings of the spouse, siblings in law also. Family and inheritance potential, because it's second and eighth axis, right? For him. So what does it provide? I have just summarized here. He has a steady growth in career throughout life. Mars and Jupiter looking from the 10th. Mars is looking combined with Jupiter in the 10th, right? Dispositor of this Scorpio is in 10th. Jupiter is looking from one aspect of the 10th towards the second house. All of this suggests a technical and engineering career path. He is an engineer. Probably consulting. He is an engineering consultancy. Desires to align with belief systems of the spouse. This is his desire. He wants to align with the spouse's family. He's very secretive about earned wealth, like I said, because the Scorpio is there, right? Family secrets. He decides to keep it for himself. He does not share it with anybody else. Well, very few. Family secrets with the spouse. That's what in his second house. Now let's move to the third house. So in his third house, we have what? We have the sign of Sagittarius. So the dispositor is in this case in his 10th house, which is fourth for the lady. And again, it's conjoined with Mars. Jupiter plus Mars, both are fiery planets. So it provides a lot of expansion, a lot of energy, a lot of drive in terms of career, a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. Can be very successful in career, right? Because it's in his 10th house. A teaching consultancy kind of career. But now we are talking about marriage also, which is in the third house. Third house is the house of skills. Look at the white box over there. Skills. What does he share as hobbies with the spouse? What kind of short journeys the couple will take as a couple? All these things it stands for. I have just summarized now how it will play out for this guy when he gets married to this lady. Remember, very specific about that. This will play out for this gentleman, whoever gets married to this lady. If he decides to change partners later on, get divorced or find another partner, this will change. This lady, however, will find similar themes. The guy will move on to other stuff. Remember that always. Nothing is fixed or etched in stone here. The communications with the spouse's family is good because Jupiter looks at it. That white arrow over here I'm showing, right? Communication is good. He will be admired for his professional success by the spouse's family. A lot of interest in learning new knowledge, esoteric and spiritual kind. I've also seen this. Keen interest through life, has a lot of skills, but is detached from it because Ketu from the 11th house looks at the third house. Ketu provides detachment. It's a moksha karaka. So although he has all of them, this is the funny thing about Ketu. Wherever it falls, the person has a lot of those talents, but it detaches the person from that. They take that for granted. As I have spoken in Rahu Ketu series, you can look that up. So a lot of skills in but takes them for granted. He's detached from them. He is assertive with knowledge and wisdom. How? Combined with Mars. I'm saying this is right and this is right. And you don't know what you're talking about. That kind of assertiveness. He has that. But not aggressive with spouse. He's not aggressive with the spouse because Jupiter does not allow that. Jupiter tempers that fire of Mars and makes it a little more tuned in with wisdom. Like, why are you doing this stuff? Why don't you try doing this stuff? That kind of a thing. Although there is a background aggressiveness, Mars is passive aggressive in this case. We'll see in the further slides because it's sitting in Cancer. So it becomes passive aggressive Mars. Okay. Lots of interest in adventure sports of all kinds. This guy goes for all kinds of things, which I've said, skydiving, go-karting, all this. Why? Because the Ketu is there. Ketu wants all this liberalistic stuff, modern stuff. He loves that stuff, right? So in terms of hobbies, in terms of the third house, he will go himself and fulfill himself in all of these things. Okay? Let's get to the fourth house. So from the fourth house, now fourth house, looking at it from the spouse's perspective and concerning marriage aspects, what does it mean? What am I looking for here? It's the peace within the marriage. Are you peaceful at home with your partner? Or is there always some strife or some quarrel or some argument going on? That's the peace of marriage. People look first that for peace. Okay, fourth house from the spouse's perspective, or fourth house from her perspective, both mean different things in this case. Like you see, fourth house from her perspective is Mars and Jupiter. So she deals with it pretty aggressively, whereas he is in a different space. Right. So from his perspective, what does the spouse provide to him in terms of peace within the marriage? Go through all these aspects in the white box, but I'm just get through the summary part of it so you can move on. Yeah. He feels the spouse is uncommunicative and restrictive at home. Why? Because the dispositor is Saturn. Saturn automatically makes things restricted. Okay, and Saturn, looking at it from his perspective, we'll come to that when we come to the seventh house, is sitting in the ascendant. So she's very Saturnian in nature, strict, hard, disciplined, melancholic, cynical, that kind of approach. That is Saturn, right? Uncommunicative, speaks very less, and fourth house aspects is ruled by Saturn. So she, and which is sitting in the ascendant, so she is uncommunicative, restrictive at home, feels no peace within the home, tries to make it up with passion from Mars. He tries to make it up. Okay? Even she tries to make it up with passion. Look, you can't substitute one emotion for the other. We are not freaking AI or robots here. We are human beings. You can't take one emotion and substitute it with something else and call it a day. Oh, now I have done my job. People are like this. Imagine that. Grown-ups are like this immature. You can't substitute passion with love. You can't substitute emotional bonding with going on holidays and saying, I will get emotional bonding in some fancy place. It doesn't work that way. It's so evident in stuff like this, right? She tries to make it up with passion of Mars because Mars is looking at the same house along with Jupiter. Preaching and teaching, Jupiter. She tries to make it up with a lot of preaching and teaching. Oh no, we are not doing this because of such and so. Because this is not wise to do this, or this is more better to do this, or this is spending less money, or something like that. Lots of preaching and teaching and passion to make up for the restriction that she herself imposes as felt by him. It is melancholic about, and it is downward energy on all attempts coming from the husband. Mind you, we are looking from the husband's perspective only in this one. The wife's one we covered it already. Towards all attempts coming from the husband to make things passionate, wise and expansive. Jupiter wants expansion. He is looking from his 10th thing towards the same house and saying, let's go out, let's do something wild. Remember the Rahu in the 11th house looking at the 5th. He wants to have a wild, nice time. He is unafraid to do that. Whereas this Saturn from the ascendant said, no, let's not do that. I'm not interested in that. I have no mood, or I have a headache, right? The standard excuse. Now let's see the 5th house. Okay, when we see the 5th house, what is there in here? The dispositor is once again Saturn, but now Rahu is sitting here. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Rahu both at the same time. So Rahu is in his own home. He is the king now. But the ascendant is sitting, Saturn is sitting in the ascendant of the spouse, meaning very Saturnian. Okay? But we are talking about this gentleman. So what does this gentleman have, which is looking towards the house of love, romance, creativity, creative intelligence, 5th house? This is 5th house for him, 11th house for the spouse. So for him, this is the 5th house. Mercury looks from the 11th house, Sun looks from the 11th house. So what does this provide us? You can look up this box of the standard aspects which I covered in the very first video of the series. Very romantic, very sensual, highly desirous of communicating as a means of connecting with the spouse. When Mercury looks from here towards Rahu, which is sitting in the house of love, romance, in his own house where he excels, maverick kind of mentality, he has all kinds of wild ideas of candlelight dinners, romance, dance, drama, you name it. He wants it all. Okay, Rahu wants it all. So it does very well here. In this guy's case, and the guy is highly romantic. For all you women, if you want to know, this chart is excellent for romance because he's very romantic, highly sensual, highly desirous of communicating. How many women crave for communication, good communication? My spouse does not communicate. Yeah. This guy is a serious communicator. He loves to talk with the spouse. But the problem is the sun sitting along with it. So it's a very alpha male kind of, like I call the last word in this argument or in this debate. wants to have the last word. Sometimes doesn't work. The equality gets lost. Isn't content unless he's got the last word. In any discussion, he wants the last word. Creative intelligence is good because Mercury is looking at Rahu, highly creative. Desires to pursue hobbies and creativity with spouse. Good, very nice, right? But feels spouse is restrictive about it. Saturn, the ruler of that fifth house, is also Saturn, which is sitting in the ascendant. He always feels that restrictive energy coming from Saturn. No, let's not. No, let's not go here. No, let's not do this. That kind. Will have unconventional maverick type children. This is something to note. See, Librans, because 11th sign of Aquarius is in the house of children, Libran ascendants everywhere invariably tend to have unusual children. Children with some, like autism, or children with some ADD, ADHD kind, or children with some unusual qualities. They may be Aquarius ascendant also. So they have unusual maverick type children if it's Libran ascendant. So because Aquarius is sitting in the house of children, they will have unusual maverick type children. Brilliant, unconventional, forward, progressive type, because the Rahu is there. And Rahu is in his house of children. So they make a very unconventional upbringing of children. Okay, let's see the 6th house now. Now let's see the 6th house. The house of quarrels within a marriage, fights, arguments, right? You, me. Okay? When it comes to marriage, 6th house represents that. And also maybe relationship to work, how it affects work. That's also important because people carry their garbage at home into the workplace. We know this, right? A boss who's emotionally upset has a fight with a wife and comes and takes it out on subordinates. Duh. Normal day at work. Right. So this arrangement, what is happening in his 6th house? The dispositor of the 10th house is sitting, Moon is sitting in the 6th house of his. Emotional enemies, you might say. Okay, he gets emotional with enemies. Also, Jupiter looks at that same house. So what does this combo give us? Right? It's a combo always. It's not one thing or the other. Right? The dispositor of the house, Jupiter, is sitting in the house of career, and the dispositor of the career house is sitting in the house of quarrels, fights. So what does this lead to? What is this guy like? Her husband. Emotional approach to resolving conflicts or difference of opinion with the spouse. Any domestic quarrel or fights with the spouse affects his work. It's two-way. Okay, because both are connected to the 10th house for him. It's 4th house for her, but it's 10th house for him. And what does this lead to, right? It affects his work and functioning professionally. Disputes, differences at work are taken seriously at an emotional level. Now, this is just pertaining to him only. Why? Because there is Moon in his 6th house. He takes it very emotionally, everything. Any differences, like why did that person say such and such a thing to me? Taking it emotionally rather than rationally. Disagreements at workplace become an emotional baggage for him. Will have a consulting advisory role in career. Why? Because Jupiter is in the 10th house along with Mars. Become wise and knowledgeable. Will be well respected for his knowledge at work by his peers and will find good mentors and advisors at work who will guide him properly. Why am I talking about that? Because 6th house is also the house of daily work. Okay. Now let's get to the interesting part. The 7th house. How he sees her. Now the first house, as we saw before, it has to do with the ascendant. So this is her head, and what's in her head, according to him, in her chart, it's Saturn. So she's very Saturnian in nature, and this person, obviously Mr. Husband, sees the wife is very Saturnian. And also the dispositor of the first house, which in her case is Aries ascendant, is sitting in the 10th house, as I have marked it there. Also, another aspect that is relevant is Ketu looking at the first house from his perspective. He is looking at Ketu, and at the first house, Ketu is sitting for him in the 11th house from his perspective and looking at the ascendant. What does this give us? Husband sees wife as very Saturnian, strict, restrictive, cynical, harsh, melancholic, lacking in joy of life and living. Deep breaths with that. Sees wife as someone who is more focused on her career and professional success rather than paying attention to him or marriage or kids. Right? Husband sees wife as someone who is very less social circle and friends. She might have very restricted social circle and friends. Perhaps as a cause for her melancholy and sad view of life. Maybe he sees this as a reason. We don't know. Husband sees marriage as fun, excitement, lots of possibilities for enjoyment through bond and sensuality and sexuality. While the spouse sees it as duty, burden, something I have to get through. I have to get through this marriage, rather than be enjoyed as a journey. The Bhavat Bhavam aspect. Remember, I talked about Bhavat Bhavam in the first beginning series of this. Principles are laid out in the first 3 videos. You can go and revisit them. Bhavat Bhavam is 7th from the 7th place is the first house, right? So there is a karmic relationship here and we are examining that. What is that? The Bhavat Bhavam aspect shows that wife may be a servant of the husband from previous life, probably treated unfairly. And now this lifetime they are here to solve that. You put so many restrictions on me last time when I was your servant. Do this, you're not cleaned this pot properly, do this, you haven't done this job properly, you don't come on time. You know how we treat our maids and servants, especially in India? Well, they will come back as your spouse next time and take your backside. Just be careful how you treat your friends, your servants, your maids, people who work for you, the workforce, because Saturn is there. Saturn is watching what you're doing very carefully. Now what happens in Mr. Husband's 8th house, which is 2nd house for her? Now Venus is sitting, and Venus is sitting in its own house. Dispositor is sitting in the same house, so it's exalted, obviously, right? And looking at it from his perspective, it's in the 8th house. So what does this give us? 8th house is change and transformation. So potential for transformations in marriage for marital bond may come about, may be brought upon by financial ups and downs, physical intimacy issues, affairs, separation with the spouse, etc. depending on, and this is important to understand, depending upon transit planets and Mahadasha of each partner. So that becomes a very detailed examination. So don't take this as the ultimate conclusion just based on Navamsha. You have to see a lot of other factors, yes? You have to see the Mahadasha playing out, and you have to see the Antardasha or the transits and everything else playing out also in each of the charts if you want to really go that deep. Yeah. Now let's see the 9th house aspects. Now in the 9th house, what's happening? First of all, it is the sign of Gemini for him. Looking at the 9th house is Gemini. Okay. And that is being aspected by Mr. Rahu from the 5th house, from his 5th house, which we just covered. What's his 5th house Rahu doing there? Yes. And the dispositor of the 9th house, Mercury, for him is sitting in the 11th house, 3rd place from itself. So what does this give us? 3rd house is for younger siblings of spouse, siblings-in-law, efforts after marriage. What is the initiative they take? Are they proactive or reactive? Spouse's luck after marriage, religion after marriage. Some people change religion after marriage, right? Philosophical compatibility, worldview. What is a worldview shared by husband and wife? Sometimes it can be very different, right? So in this arrangement, what does it provide this gentleman? What does he see it as? He sees it as good luck from marriage, right? Because Rahu is looking at it, right? And it may cause good savings also because it is sitting in the 5th house of speculative gains. So this person may make good gains. So that brings good luck. Some good luck is there. Obsession with speculative gains. Oh my goodness, I've seen this guy with obsession of stock market. May cause losses unnecessarily. Too much of over expectation about gaining something from Bitcoin or all these cyber currencies or stock market. Too much of speculative thing. Or they always tend to overstretch a little bit, isn't it? They tend to over amplify what can be got. There's so many these days like that. But they can also make sudden gains depending upon transits. Eccentric ideas of spirituality. Why this Rahu guy sitting in the 5th house is looking at the 9th house. So 9th house is also the house of philosophy and wisdom. But this guy has all eccentric ideas about it. wanting like maverick type, wanting suddenly to go on retreats and thinking everything, I have got everything in my head, I have sorted out the God in my head. Weird ideas, right? Wanting to debate and counter argue everything related to the topic. Rahu wants to argue everything. No, I am right. No, what about this? No, what about that? Have you seen God? Or have you done this? What has it got you? This argumentative people in spirituality, that comes from Rahu in the 5th house or in the 9th house even. Headless philosophical inclination. Why do I say headless? Because it is not grounded. It is just an obsession. Rahu is just obsessed about this. It is not having any grounding there. Okay? Confused. It leads to confusion because even the dispositor of where Rahu is sitting, Saturn is sitting in the spouse's spouse, what she says counters his argument and he ends up being confused. More confused than before. Wants it but goes about it in a headless, childish ways. They want to understand philosophy, but if you're being childish, if you're throwing tantrums, you're not going to get any philosophy anywhere. Okay? May worry wife about this aspect. This aspect of him is a huge concern to the wife because wife has got Saturn. She's very grounded in that respect. She says, what are you talking? What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. So she may be worried about this aspect and she controls it with a Saturnian whip. I call it whip of Saturn because Saturn tends to straighten out all these kind of weird, funny ideas that people have about anything, really. Right? Now let's go to his house of career and see what goes on in there. So let's see what goes on in the 10th house for him. Jupiter and Mars combination. Now Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so Jupiter is in a very good position. Mars becomes passive aggressive because it's in Cancer, it's debilitated, right? And they are looking at the house. The dispositor of the 10th house is sitting in the 6th house, so there'll be challenges, there'll be constant enemies at work. So what does it provide him in a career life and in terms of view of marriage itself? He becomes passive aggressive at work. He has challenges at work. He has enemies at work. He becomes an advisory role like a consulting career which he has. He has enemies at work who provoke him emotionally, which he must learn to overcome or control. He has expertise and respect of peers and can be carried away by passive aggressive behavior towards perceived enemies at work. That's the key word. Perceived enemies. They're not his enemies. When I tried telling him many times, they are not your enemies. Why are you getting obsessed about this? Always having suspicion about that. And he carries the same kind of energy with in-laws as well. He's always suspicious about them. They're trying to get to me kind of. Okay? So that's what's going on because of the planets and aspects to the 10th house. Now see his 11th house, house of gains of the marriage. So in his 11th house, the house of gains, we have the combination this over here, okay, which is Mercury, Sun and Ketu. Very funny combination, right? One gives detachment, one wants fame, one is very talkative. So highly differentiating kind of energy, right? So what are the aspects of this, right? Ketu is looking at the ascendant. Sun and Mercury combination is looking at Rahu, which Rahu is also aspecting here. Rahu, but Ketu mainly. Ketu looking at the ascendant and this one. Its fulfillment, what is the house itself? The 11th house or 5th house in her case is fulfillment of desires within the marriage, partnership as felt by the spouse. So what does he feel? He feels detached from the spouse, yet obsessed with romance, affairs and love. Detached from spouse, Ketu looking at the ascendant. Ketu looking at the house of spouse. He's strangely detached towards spouse. And at the same time, he wants love, romance and to feel all those nice things. So he goes out and has affairs. How do you tell which one is right and wrong in this case? It's easy to judge, especially for women. They are too judgmental about all this. There's no need to judge. It's there in his chart. What are you going to do with it? Telling me you're born at the wrong time? Come on. Detached from spouse, yet obsessed with romance, affairs of love. Obsessed with speculative markets. Again, because it's looking at the 5th house, this fellow. He's obsessed with speculative gains, stock market, Bitcoin, trading platforms, that kind of thing. He may make sudden gains, especially in the transits of Sun and Rahu. Whenever they make a transit over his 5th house, he may make huge gains. These kind of huge gains may not be sustainable though, because they're not long term, they're not steady. Okay, so got to be careful of too much of speculative gains for this gentleman. Now let's look at his last house, the 12th house, and what is his relationship to spirituality, if at all any. Now the 12th house provides us a funny combination, because first of all it's in Virgo. Virgo is not very practical with spirituality, right? Virgo is a practical earthy sign. Spirituality is leaving the earth, so it's not very friendly for Libran's ascendant. Generally he's a Libran ascendant, or like Libran ascendant. Mind you, don't get confused, he might not be a Libran ascendant per se, but he's got Libran like qualities. Now Moon looks at this house from the 6th house, and the dispositor Mercury is sitting 12th place from itself. So what does this provide us? Sudden changes in life may cause attraction towards spiritual life. Attraction. Remember, Rahu is sitting here in the 5th house and also looking at the 9th house. So it gives a little eccentric tendency. So when he loses money, he feels like, now I need to renounce everything, leave everything and run to the forest or run to some spiritual ashram, find some guru. Well, you just lost some money. It doesn't mean it's spirituality. So that may cause attraction towards spiritual life arising from depression, extreme mood swings. 12th place from itself leads to a lot of mood swings of this Mercury. Okay? Loss of intellect, loss of money, disillusionment of spousal expectations. Look at what we went through in the previous houses in this video. Okay? This gentleman's expectations of the spouse from her was not met at all. He was of one kind of personality and the wife is of a completely different kind of personality. So his expectations have been squashed. So do you blame him if he goes into depression and wants to run to an ashram? That may happen here. That's what this lady's spouse will see marriage with her as. The next one we shall take some more case studies. So just be with me here. We need to cover some more case studies to see some other kind of combinations and what that leads to. Okay. Meanwhile, take care and be safe.